This is the all-electric, all-new Nissan Ariya SUV, and it's the car that's primed to take Nissan EVs mainstream, and it's coming to Australia in 2023. Let's check it out. So what is the Nissan Ariya, you may ask? Well, it isn't a replacement for the Nissan Leaf because Nissan says they will replace that car later. But what it is probably one of the most appealing all-electric Nissans in, well, forever. And that's because, if you haven't noticed, it's an SUV. So the Nissan Ariya was co-developed alongside Renault's latest Megane E-Tech, and that explains why it sits on the same CMF EV architecture. And that also explains why the Nissan is actually powered by Renault's all-new electrically excited electric motors that are cutting edge. Now this one produces around 160 kilowatts and 300 newton meters of torque. So that means it hits 100 kilometers per hour in around 7.5 seconds. But most people will be more impressed by the fact that this can average up to 533 kilometers between top-ups. So when the Nissan Ariya eventually arrives in Australia in around 2023, think of this car as bridging the gap between the Volkswagen ID3 and the ID4. Anyway, like the Renault, it also mounts its engine over the front axle, which means it's front-wheel drive. Anyway, let's take it for a drive. Inside, the premium feel continues. I mean, this feels like a world away from something like the Leaf. There's this Alcantara covering over the dash, and there's an amazing wood panel that stretches from one side of the car to the other and have these really cool virtual haptic buttons that, yeah, are really simple to use and are decent shortcuts. The infotainment system is large, it's 12.3, and there's also a digital instrument cluster, and if that's not enough, you have a really decent head-up display ahead of you. It's all really simple and intuitive to use. When it arrives in Australia, Nissan says it expects to offer the full lineup of Ariyas. That means you'll have the choice of two battery packs, a 63 kilowatt hour and a bigger 87 kilowatt hour. Now there'll also be the choice of either front-wheel drive or Nissan's new e-Force all-wheel drive. Now today we're just concentrating on the front-wheel drive version. Now the front-wheel drive version with the bigger battery, that's the one that delivers the 533 kilometers. But even the base model we're driving right now can still return up to 403 kilometers between top-ups. So what does the Ariya drive like? Well, for our market, it actually will be offered with the European trim. So it's got a slightly different dampers and it's got sort of more self-centering effect on the steering wheel. And you know what? It's pretty decent. The ride can be agitated. We're on Swedish roads at the moment that are generally quite smooth, but at times it can get a bit fidgety, which does make me worry about what will happen when we get it home in Australia. But the biggest takeaway is just the levels of refinement. I mean, this is an absolute joy. It's quiet, it's smooth, and there's a decent amount of pace available when you punch it. I think it's worth pointing out that despite being co-developed alongside the Renault Megane E-Tech, the Ariya is going for a completely different buyer. And that explains why it's so much bigger and taller. That means this car is significantly heavier. How heavy? Well, the one we're driving now is 1900 kilos. While the biggest dual motor versions, they tip the scales at 2.2 tons. And with all that excess baggage, it kind of explains why, well, this is not the most agile, entertaining or engaging EVs money can buy. It's safe and secure, but it doesn't really reward you when you push on. So we have a nice corner here coming up, and we tip in, and there's just a little bit more body roll than perhaps you'd have in the Megane. That said, the damping is generally very good, and we especially like how Nissan blends the regen and real braking. So overall, the Nissan Ariya really doesn't let the side down, but it doesn't also excel against some of its rivals. Nissan Australia say it's too early to discuss pricing or even final specification for the Ariya. But when it finally arrives in 2023, we think the cheapest two-wheel drive versions will be priced from around $70,000. And pricing, of course, will be crucial for what feels like a landmark Nissan. While cars like the Nissan Leaf helped Australians take their first tentative steps into pure electric motoring, it's cars like the Ariya that cement EVs as the cars of the future.